So I had to take a little bit of a break. Autopilot. Um, this is autopilot. This is why people. So I don't know if this is like the mask comes off and it's autism. I don't know if it's trauma. What it feels like to me is I get so overwhelmed with emotion, and boom, this happens. I don't take an action to create it. It just happens. So it's like blinking. So my father is punishing me for the actions my mother took with her father. Does that make sense? I should be taken to a homeless shelter. So nobody should look at the actual context or experience you've had with me personally. And don't look at that. Don't look at my resume. Don't look at my things I've accomplished or my children or the way I handled my life. Don't do that. Just look at my face and then remember someone you hate and then punish me for that. So no, none of these people, well, my father and his fourth wife, don't feel remorse, apparently, because they felt validated in, I should, what he actually said to me out of his mouth hole while I was staring at him. We were sitting in the car. So he had said, "Do you want to go to lunch?" And I was like, "No, I think we have, I think it's going to be talking." And we used to, when I turned 15, the day I turned 15, my dad was a cop in this area. And so he made me start driving on that day, like back roads and stuff, to learn how to drive. So when I got my license at 16, I had a lot of experience. So like if we got pulled over, he would just pull the cop cart, right? And so I really like to drive. It's very meditative to me. And so not having a car for a long time, which again is to me really shameful to me because I can't like get to my kids right away. And I have to ask people for rides. Um, I mean, now I do lift, um, but it's really claustrophobic feeling, and I try not to think about it because it'll freak me out. I've been in bumfuck Maryland without a car and without people that can get to me quickly, and I can't get to them quickly, and then I move to another place and I can't get to people and I can't move. I can't escape, and it's a really awful feeling. So it's just an aside. It's just another symptom, side effect of this situation. So I was like, yeah, I don't think we should be driving. So we just parked like in a parking lot, in a busy kind of shopping center, so we could look at people and talk. So I was just, a lot of this was just in the car, and so I was just staring at him. And he said, I told him to take you to the state service center because I thought that would be the impetus for you, because I didn't think you were really trying to get a job. So I basically said what I just said was, I've always had a job and I worked really hard. And I was telling you, and you had proof, and I could give you names and dates and times when I talked to these people and what steps I had taken. So even though you had all that proof of that, and my vast job experience, and that every way that I carry myself is in the exact opposite way of your ex-wife, you decided that I was not trying to get a job because I wanted to go through this horrifying thing in front of my children and lose all the respect that I had earned with them by not providing for them. Yeah, that was my master plan. I am such a good grifter. If I was a grifter, I think I would have had more money and not been in that situation. I didn't have food to eat. If I was a grifter, I wasn't good at it. That's not what I was doing, and you knew it. So that's unbelievable to me. We need to stop talking about this. And he was quiet. I think he said, "I'm sorry, I missed it." I don't. I said, "Stop." Because it's too big. It's too big. And I kind of wanted him to know what happened. So I didn't want to get stuck there. So I said, "Well, let me tell you what happened." Um, so I told him about that and that I had heard I was to be not helped, and that you didn't take any action. So I understood that to mean that you were not a resource, and that your fourth wife, which now I now know was both of you, were actually taking action to tell people not to help me, and apparently based on some insanity of yours, because you don't like your ex-wife and I look like her, just like your son is doing. Um, the stuff his parent did to him, I'm being punished for that because I look like her, even though I'm a completely different kind of a parent, and I'm not his parent. Somehow I should be punished. Okay, whatever. But I'm the crazy one. So, um, and I said I, within days, I had a giant man in my face screaming and spitting in my face about how I deserved this, and I was a terrible wife and mother and sister and daughter, and I deserved this, and I didn't have any friends, and that proved that I deserved it, and I should be in a homeless shelter. Um, and I was being threatened with that, and I was being told to kiss the ashes of his dead dog that he had in a box on a shelf. And on the third day, and this I said this very specifically to this person. So I said to my genetic donor, I don't know if you know this, but my genetic donor, I didn't say that, I said father, was a cop. And he didn't grow up around guns, and he learned about guns when he was in the military and was in Vietnam. And so he took it very seriously, and he taught us to handle guns in a very specific way. And then he became a cop. And we didn't shoot at beer cans in the backyard. Um, we did it really safely in the shooting range at the police department in the basement where the shooting range was. And we cleaned the guns and we paid attention and we knew what that meant. And on the third day, this person walked into the room and around to the other side of the bed and placed their feet shoulder width apart and then got in a shooter's pose and pointed a loaded Glock at me. And that seemed to shock him. Now, autopilot has kicked in, but when I was telling the story, I was crying. He's the only person on earth that knows that from 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, that our father taught us how to handle guns in a certain way. And so if you point a loaded gun at someone, that's a threat. And I said, he did that. And I was starving and 5'6" and like 110, 120 pounds. And I had nowhere to go. And he pointed a loaded gun at me. He told me he watched me when I slept and I didn't deserve to sleep well. And he told me really awful things. He said, I'm really sorry I went through that. In a really weird, soft, detached way. And maybe because he's in shock. I don't know. But you're going to hear the whole truth. And I said, I need to explain this to you in the most serious terms. That I am physically afraid of him and that he's incredibly violent and dangerous, very specifically to me. Because I know how violent and abusive he is, and he doesn't want anyone to know. And I know. And I said, the only thing I own is my honor and integrity, and I'm not a liar. So this is the truth. And if you have a question, I have texts and videos to my 3 children and your other daughter who knew this was happening at the time. And she wrote back to me and asked me what I expected her to do about it. And it was upsetting. Which seemed to surprise him. Um, I will say when I was telling him these things, he seemed aghast. It's a lot of stuff and it's upsetting stuff. And I don't know if he really understands it. I think he does. He was a cop. And he has seen this person be really violent and angry. And I'm not a liar. And when you and when I think people with even very limited emotional intelligence, like this person, this genetic donor that I'm speaking to, can tell if I'm lying or not, if the fear and trauma is real or not. And this is kind of what I look like while I was telling him. So, all I can do is speak my truth quietly and clearly. But I did offer that I had texts and videos of it if he needed to see them. Because again, apparently he just makes shit up, and I'm really his ex-wife and not me. So who knows what he actually heard and understood. I have no idea now. I have no idea. I think it's a big thing, and I think there's probably some cognitive dissonance. So maybe he heard half of what I said and understood half of that. So maybe a quarter of it. And I made sure he understood that these things, these violent things, were when this person was sober. It was not when they were drinking. When they were drinking, they cry like a girl. This was stone cold sober, violent, evil shit. And then I told him part of the problem is I wouldn't agree. And I thought he was a misogynist, and it was probably the genetic host's fault, not my problem. And I think he probably treated all the women he's ever been around like this. The problem is he doesn't get to excuse it around me because I lived there, and I lived there longer than he did. So you don't get to say your genetic host was mean to you because you got to go to the nice house. I didn't. So, and it made him mad. And so when he would try that and say the next day after he did this abusive stuff and he would, whatever, the next day he would act and I would say, because he would try to be normal. And I was like, you just screamed in my face and pointed a gun at me And he would say, you deserve that because you haven't spoken to me for 13 years. And I said, no. I never agreed, and it agitated it. And I explained to my genetic donor um, very clearly that when, in January, when I had nowhere to go, and because I didn't have enough food and my brain didn't work right, I was just going to walk into the woods. And I didn't think that was good for your brain to do that and just accept it. And then when you have a loaded gun pointed at you, to accept it again. Like, that's not good for you. Um, and a part of the problem is you could beat me to death, but I'm not going to agree to this. So I'm not saying I wasn't afraid to be physically hurt, but I'm not going to agree to this. You're not going to get me to say a lie. That's how much not a liar I am. So I also explained that I think the reason he didn't do it is because he's such a narcissist that if he did do that and actually put his hands on me, like punch me in the face where you could see it, he wouldn't be able to explain that away. And I said to my genetic donor, very specifically to you, because he wants to look like the hero. And he wouldn't be able to explain doing that. So that's why he couldn't do things like that. And I said, I want to make sure you understand that when he would drink 16 ounces of straight handmade Tito's vodka in 20 minutes, and he would get really drunk, he was telling me things that he was doing when he was a kid, 10, 12, 14 years old. So this is a personality disorder. This isn't because he wore a certain kind of uniform. But I'm sure if there was an accident that involved me, he would say that that's what that was. No, he has a personality disorder and he followed a path to continue to hurt people and wear a nice suit and get medals for doing it. And then if he ever had bad behavior, he could blame it on that. I'm not saying going to war probably didn't make it worse, but he was doing really disturbing things in before he put that on, and like to girlfriends and stuff. So I can't imagine what he was doing to them. Like, I think the only thing that kept me safe is there was no way he could explain this to the rest of the people in the family if he did that. Like, legitimately, visibly did something. I think, and I told my donor, I think he was actually, I'm not a joke, gonna shoot me and then say it was PTSD. And everybody would feel bad for him because he's a victim. Or shoot me and shoot himself. One of those things was gonna happen. I really believe that, and that's why I took videos, because I wanted to make sure that if that happened, that there would be evidence that my kids could take to the police. That was it. That's what I was doing. I wasn't taking videos to put them on Facebook. I was putting them on for evidence when that event happened. And the only reason I told my kids was anybody that wears that same uniform, any person, if they knew the things he did to me, every bone in his body would be broken, and they would take his uniform away. He doesn't deserve to wear that uniform. Anybody that wears that uniform would never tolerate this. That he's walking around like he's a fucking hero. He's not. He's not. And I didn't want, if something happened, for people to treat him that way, because he wasn't some misunderstood person. He is dangerous, and he was wearing a mask for a long time. And he was doing this shit to his girlfriends, and he was doing other weird shit before he had girlfriends. And I mean disturbing shit. 10, 12 years old. And I'm sure he's fun time, great guy when he's wearing that uniform with other guys wearing that uniform. Because he would never, this would not be tolerated wearing that uniform. Ever. Not by those people. To your little sister who's starving when the world's upside down. Wow, man. You're a real fucking tough guy. I mean, I would love. There's somebody in my family that wore that uniform who's not here. Um, this would have been taken care of. He wouldn't have survived that. And now I'm telling my donor, and he's just looking at me like this. Like he can't take the information in. Right? So I said I want to make sure you understand. He doesn't get to get off with that. That's what he was setting up. He's not. He told me awful shit he was doing before he put the uniform on. And you need to understand that. Anyway, so I told him about, and I want you to understand this very specifically, genetic donor. He would say that you, genetic donor, said something. So he was still talking to you. And then he would say, genetic donor said this. And I said, no, he didn't. And he said, yes, he did. And I said, no, he didn't. Call him. Call him right now on the speakerphone. Which, while I was telling the story to my father, thought was funny because he knows that's what I'm like. See, again, he knows what I'm like. I don't tolerate bullshit and I don't lie. So then why, when I'm starving, do you make me be your ex-wife? You know what I'm like. I don't tolerate bullshit, but then I get punished because I look like your ex-wife. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, you understand who I am, but also get to back away and say, well, I saw what my ex-wife did to her. What do you... Anyway, so I said, call him right now on the phone. I don't know if you remember it. And he said, I do. And I said, okay. So he called you and you were on the phone and I could hear your voice. And he said, did you do this? Did you say this? And you said no. And I looked at him like that. And I said, thank you, Dad. And he said, I remember that. And then my brother said something. And what I heard you say, Dad, I made sure to say it in a mean way. I usually use his first name, but don't let her upset you, buddy. I said, those are the last words I heard you say. Now, as I said, the second day he did this, the third day he did that, and then every single day he was terrorizing me, yelling and screaming at me, watching me sleep, wanting me to... He's out of his fucking mind, and you're telling me, or you're telling him, for me not to upset him. Do you understand? He's telling you a narrative of something that's going on that is not true, and he won't let me speak directly to you. So he hung up the phone. I want to make sure you understand this, genetic donor. He hung up the phone, and for the next hour and a half, stood over me, screaming at me until I was a ball on the floor. And I mean screaming, and just like when I was a little girl of 6 and 7 and 8 years old screaming, nobody cared. We were in a townhouse and we had neighbors. Nobody called a cop. Nobody gave a shit. Which is, see, autopilot kicked in again. Like my voice goes deeper. Do you see? Crying, autopilot. Crying, autopilot. Anyway, you can see it right now while it's happening. Anyway, so again, my genetic donor was just looking at me. Yeah. So I said, he's screaming and screaming, and he's screaming in my ear, and I'm screaming on the floor, and he won't stop. And then he put his hands on me. It was the first time he put his hands on me. After the phone call with you, he put his hands on me, and he wouldn't let go, and I couldn't get him off me. I couldn't get him off me. Look, do you see how big my wrists are? I couldn't get him off me, and I was just screaming. It was really bad. It was really scary. And I was alone. And when I would text my sister, and I couldn't call you, genetic donor, because you made it pretty clear in that phone call that you were on his side. That it had to be my fault. The genetic donor in this moment in the car said, I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry that happened. That's the first person to say that. That's the first person to say that since it happened. For any of it. Not my sister, not my kids. That's the first time anybody said that. So, I told him, and it just kept getting worse. And then I remembered that I actually wasn't afraid to die. Apparently, the universe wanted me there, and this was gonna how it was gonna end. But I knew absolutely that I was not designed to give in. He wanted to destroy my brain, and it wasn't gonna happen. So I just kept trying to withdraw as much as I could and avoid him. Uh, I did find out, I said, on July 2nd, which was the scariest day, because I knew he was going to be crazy. And I was trying to give him the shortest amount of time to know that I was moving out on July 6th. And he was crazy. Uh, so I just tried to stay away from him, and I tried not to talk to him. And he went crazy, and he was like, "You can't move there, and they won't have good internet." And I said I paid her $200 more to upgrade it, and it's fine. And he didn't really want me here anyway. And I said, he told me that you had been paying him $200 a month to pay for my food. Now you have to remember, this is an old man. And he said, no, I wasn't. And I said, what? He said, you did. And he said, no, I wasn't. I don't remember doing that. Now, he may have forgotten. I don't know. Like I said, he'll remember half of what I said and half of that half. So he's going to check, but I'm sure he's forgotten that he has to check. Do you understand what I'm saying? But he doesn't think he did that. And I'm like, because I got a job, I moved there February 6th. I had this job March 21st or something, and I paid for everything. Once I got the first check, nobody was buying my food. So you were paying him money. I didn't know that you were paying him, and he was just putting it in his pocket. And I told him I handed him a check. He said it didn't go in his bank. I used that check to then open another thing and got a notice 2 weeks later that said the check had already been cashed. And then I said, did it actually go in your bank? You would tell me, right? And he went, which my genetic donor understood in the same way I did. So he took $1,100 from a starving homeless person? Okay, whatever. And then I moved away, and I'm really terrified and scared. And then I moved in with that maniac, and I explained the maniac. And then she wouldn't pay her bills, and the Tinder guy, and it was crazy, and there was no heat. And my sister, who got me there, said she would help me all the time, and she drove by that house 10 times a week. and she only took me shopping twice in a year. And then she told me to go to this other place. I went to the other place, and the guy was a creep and was hitting on me. And then he was mad that I wasn't interested in that. Um, and he was kind of a nut, and he was going to blow up my Mac. And then he told me how to get out, and I was scared, crazy. And then my sister said she would co-sign for me. And as soon as I said that, this is what's funny. I said, I don't have any. The only thing messing my credit up is this judgment. And I actually read a thing that I don't know that they can use it against you, but whatever. I don't have credit cards. I don't have car payments. I literally don't have any other debt but that. Um, which has surprised him because again, I think they think I don't. I have tennis shoes that are 12 years old. I have some Chuck Taylors. I did buy some new ones that I could slip on like last year, and I have 6-year-old pants. I I'm not. Where do you see the money? My jewelry? Like I don't know what these people think. I really don't. I told them how much I make an hour, what I do for work, where I work, how much I make an hour. It's still low income and where we are. And then I've been working there 4 years, so I'm not a piece of shit. But every time I move, I have to keep paying these people money, security deposit, buy new mattresses. Um, so I said, your daughter told me that she would co-sign, and as soon as I said that, he laughed and said, "There's no way she's doing that." And I go, "Well, it's funny you should say that." Because when I called her back and said, "Hey, can you call these people?" She said, "Yeah, I don't know why I said that. I'm not doing that." Which, in a dark and sick way, we both chuckled at. And I said, "Yeah, but it made me lose my mind." And I was just circling and circling, circling around a room and had to call a helpline. And I will say, in every part of this, he really seemed to be upset. But again, the reason this all started was because you people thought I was some kind of piece of shit that caused it, and I didn't. And I said, I need you to understand, and I still don't think you do, because you just said it again, that I caused this. I didn't. You knew I was looking for work in 2019. You know the world turned upside down, and there weren't any jobs because whole industry shut down. But somehow it's me not trying to find a job. Like, and so I'm stressed out of my mind and traumatized, and I don't want to be around people. And this guy was a creep and had cameras on all the doors, and said, "Get out." And then I asked my sister to help me again, and she said, "No, I don't really want to do that." And then I got into this one of the most despicable, gross places, abusive, neglectful, lying, fraud places with right now 9 dogs in it. And it's disgusting. And I told him what it's like here. And that's what he looked like. And throughout, I could do it pretty smoothly, but then I would cry. And I was like, it's overwhelming. And I'm trying to do the best I can. And I'm really scared of your son. And if he comes anywhere near me, and I'm not kidding, I'm going to put this in because he physically abused me and hates me, and he doesn't want me to tell you the truth. That's why I don't know what he's telling you, why this is the first time you've reached out, and why on the phone you said, "Don't let her upset you, buddy." I don't know what story he's telling you to make you think I'm some piece of shit. So you might want to think about that. I'm not a piece of shit. So if you have any questions about the abuse, there are 4 people you can talk to about it, and I have videos and texts to prove it. Not a piece of shit. I've been at my job. I can show you my W-2s. I can show you that I got raises and promotions. And I've been working, and I've been trying to do all this shit all by myself. So, and I'm overwhelmed. I don't know where I did anything wrong. I didn't cause any of this. When you don't have any money and the world goes upside down, every little thing costs more money. I don't have a car and I don't want to bother my kids, so I get Lyft rides, which is money to get to a store and then pay whatever it is at the store and then get back, or go to a doctor that you can't. Like I can't. I don't have any money, so I'm trapped. And I paid $835 for 11 years for an end unit townhouse, which is a nice townhouse. I'm paying $800 to have a bedroom and share a disgusting bathroom that I have to use Lysol wipes to use. It's really bad. My same townhouse is $2,500 a month. An apartment, which he's again a cop, so he knows what these places are like. A studio apartment in a bad apartment complex is $1,500. So almost twice what I'm paying to live in a dangerous place, and I can't afford to live there. So just want you to know what I've been doing on my side. So I told the whole truth. And there were some, I was crying. I was crying. It's a lot. And again, I don't know. It's a lot to take in for him, I think. It would be a lot for anybody. Because he has no idea that's been going on. I don't know what people have been telling him. I think my brother is trying to keep him away from me. He doesn't want anybody to know that that happened and how scary he is. And I also told him that when I had just separated from my ex-husband, he had come back from his second deployment and he was having a problem. And I said, hey, I've been seeing this lady on and off. Like anytime I kind of need to talk to somebody, I go see this lady. She's really cool. She knows our whole family history, our parents. She knows who they are. So, and she's really cool because she's very just like, your mom's a sociopath. She said that's the second time I went to see her. And I went, like, my brain was not ready to process it. And she saw it and went, no, it's fine, go ahead. And it, like, made me, like, I hadn't, like, that's how disassociated I knew I needed help, but I had no idea, whatever. Anyway, she knew our whole family history, and I said, so it's kind of a cheat. You could go to her, you don't have to explain all this shit. I mean, you can explain your perspective of it, but she knows who these people are. But really, he went to her because he thinks something bad happened to me. Um, when I was younger. And he very specifically went to my doctor to try. Well, he came to a park where I was with my kids and said he went to see my doctor and that she had confirmed this thing. And I said, you're full of shit. First of all, I know my doctor. Um, she would never confirm anything or say anything about what I said. And he was trying to get me to tell him this thing. See, he thought that happened, and he's thought that had happened for a long time. And, but I legitimately just was like, hey, I had no idea. He literally went to my doctor. This is how much of a lunatic he is. That's what I'm saying. He's such a lunatic that he went to my doctor to find out what I said to my doctor, not for himself. Do you understand how crazy that is? And then when she went, you, I think she said, you should go talk to your sister. He came and tried to act like she had told him something. Do you see how crazy that is? And I made sure my donor understood that. Do you see the insanity of that? This is because he said, well, I think he has bipolar disorder. Okay, maybe. I was with somebody for 8 years with that who took his medication and understood what his, when he was going to have a thing and would get his shit checked. People like that aren't violent and abusive. I was with this man for 8 years. He was not violent and abusive. If he had been anything like that, I wouldn't ever have kissed him. And he certainly wouldn't be around me or in my home. So if he's telling you, he said, I think he has it. He told me he was taking, that's a lie. He doesn't take medication. He drinks straight vodka. He's a liar. I'm telling you, he's a liar and he's abusive. And he pointed a gun at me. And he said, I believe he did that. I'm not actually that surprised that you're telling me this. Okay. I said, but what I'm going to tell you is if he's saying that his bad behavior is based on that particular condition, that's bullshit. This is something totally different. You can be bipolar disorder and a psychopath. You can be a narcissist and a miser. Like it doesn't mean bipolar disorder does not mean that you are an abusive, terrible person. I was with this man for 8 years. The man I was just with, he never, ever, he would never, he personally understood because I was with him when I hadn't talked to my brother and I told him what my brother had done. And that man made me feel very, very safe. First of all, he was a giant man. And he was not intimidated by anybody and not an asshole. He didn't like to fight. He was actually a pacifist mostly. But he was a huge man and he knew how to fight if he had to fight. And he had been in fights. Um, so he would defend me and mine, believe me. And like if I saw that man right now, he knew how scared I was of my brother. Like really scared. And that's before all this other shit happened. And I made him promise when he actually finally moved out that my fear was that like one of our parents would die and that there would be a funeral. And uh, I don't give a shit about going to these people's funeral. I really don't. The only reason I would go is if my kids wanted to go and they needed me to be there for them. I don't give a fuck about my parents. Um, so you want me to be respectful of you in death when you could give a flying fuck about me when I was alive? I don't know how that works. No, I don't care. But if my kids wanted to go and felt nervous or whatever, I would go for my own kids, right? Anyway, so my fear was, and my ex knew how terrified I was just with him chasing me through the house. So that's why when I had to be delivered to his house, how scary that was for me. Like in that 13 years that I hadn't seen him before I met this boyfriend guy, he came to my house and walked around my house banging on the windows of my house. That was the incident of chasing me through the house, and that was in the time before I started dating this man for 8 years. So he understood how scared I was of my brother. Um, so as I was hugging him when he was leaving, I made him agree and shake my hand that if one of my parents died and I had to go to their funeral, that he would go with me so that I wouldn't be so scared of my brother. I made him shake my hand, and he did. And I said, of course. And then he moved back up to upstate New York. And then all that crazy shit happened. Not that I would call him, but, like before I was homeless, I probably wouldn't have called him, right? But if he was there, he would have kept me safe. I could have called him, and he wouldn't have said, "What do you want me to do about it?" I wouldn't have had to say that. I would have said, I wouldn't have had to say any of that. Because he was like a human. And he would have come so fast. And again, just because he's a decent human being. And he knew how scared I was and how dangerous that person was. Like, he actually knows me.
He lived with me, and I was in love with him for 8 years. And he saw how hard I worked and what kind of mom I was. Like, if I ran into him, and I told him this, he would go and find my brother. That's part of why I was in love with him, because it made me feel really, really safe. And like the first time I ever felt really safe in my life was with him, because he was really calm, although medicated. And he wasn't intimidated by anybody. And my brother is used to being the smartest, jock, cool, fun guy. That's his mask. And he doesn't respect anybody else's opinion. And that wouldn't have worked with this man that I was with at all. He wouldn't be impressed or bullied or conned. He wouldn't be dismissed. My brother does that to people. If he doesn't respect you, he will talk over you, literally not look at you, which is so disrespectful. This man I was with would not have tolerated that. First of all, he wouldn't have tolerated him in my space at all, scaring me at all. He would not have tolerated it. But if we were in the same space, yeah, that wouldn't have been good. Which is scary, because I don't really want a bad thing to happen. I know I would have been kept safe. And if anybody had a problem, and like I said, this guy's a pacifist. He would call me to get a spider out of the bathroom, not because he was afraid of it, but he really, really took very seriously, which is weird because he was in the military, and right out of high school he didn't know what to do, so he went in the Navy, and then he was one of those guys in the secret room on the ship, like really smart guy in the secret room, doing secret stuff. But he really didn't want to be involved with killing people. He didn't figure that out until like his third year in the military. So he got out. So he really made a promise to himself that he wasn't ever going to hurt people if he could avoid it. But he also was a bouncer and a offensive lineman, and he was gigantic. So anyway, like I didn't want that to happen, but I knew I was really safe and that he would do that if it needed to be done. So I mean, I would love him to talk to these people in my family that think I'm some kind of piece of shit, because I'm not. First of all, he lived with me and saw what kind of person I was, and he also knew my genetic host. And he's the one that said, "Hey, your genetic host is still using, right?" Like what? Like so he knew what a scumbag my genetic host was. So, like, he would be so offended for me if he knew these people thought I was anything like her. Like, it's so weird. It doesn't. Whatever. So I got all that out. And he said, "I'm really sorry. It does sound really overwhelming. And I wish I could help. We just really don't have space." Okay. I don't know what that means. I didn't really expect you to help me. I didn't say that. I just was like, and I said, "Well, I'm working on trying to get my own place. I'm trying to do this program for first time, low income. Um, trying to figure it out." And that's my plan. And I just kind of keep grinding it out. And I try to find as much peace as I can. So, um, I didn't do anything wrong to deserve this. And I need you to know that. And I actually was afraid to tell you this truth because I don't trust you to not go there and say something to him. And he's really dangerous. And I'm not making that up. And he said, I know that. I've seen it, and we've had conversations because he'll lose his temper with the donor. So, I mean, everybody's seen it, but you aren't trapped with it and tiny and have no escape. It's different, but he is physically dangerous. So, and I told him this disgusting person and what they do, and I was like, I'm documenting it, so when I leave, I will dismantle it, and but I gotta get out of here. So, and then we had lunch. We started at 8:30. He dropped me back off here at like 3:30, 4. So we were together like 7.5 hours. It was a lot of shit. That's what I'm saying. He won't remember most of it. And God knows what he's going to do with it. In his crazy brain, he's going to mismatch it up in some crazy way where I'm an asshole. I don't know. And then he said something weird about he's grateful to have seen me and he's glad and he really wants, it would be great if we could talk. And I'm like, I don't have anybody else to talk to. Whatever. Um, and then he said, and number 4, his number 4 wife, are going to have a talk because you're going to get into the rotation like the other kids. And we're not comparing stepkids to kids. What? So they have a lot of money, my donor and his wife, because his parents left him money. They didn't leave the grandchildren any money, so far as I know. I don't know. Which is how he was, because he was a cop, you don't make a lot of money. But he got left a lot of money, like 6 figures from his father. And he was able to buy a house, and then he'd buy another house and invest in whatever. I mean, well done. But he has money. And I guess he's been giving my stepbrother and stepsister, my brother and sister, money. All these people have master's degrees. My stepbrother works for the banks and he's been working there for like 25, 30 years. Like, he's one of those people. He's the top 10 of the top 10%. And then my stepsister works, like, she has a good job. She has a degree and she works in like, well, it used to be like kind of like, it doesn't matter. She has a good job. And then my sister has a master's degree and she's been teaching over 30 years. And so she makes really good money, like 6 figures. And then this lunatic was in the military and he was a pilot and he retired from there and then he has another job. So all these people make a lot of money. But I guess he's been giving them money. I don't, like, he gave me enough money that I can get a new phone, right? It's significant and it makes a huge difference in my life. Now, so to give you a general idea of how much money it is, it'll get me back to where I was before I lost those 3 days and 150. Like, I don't know that I can get a new phone, but I can get there, right? It gives me a little bit of a, that's a huge deal to me. So I don't know what he's talking about, and apparently number 4 doesn't think. I guess there was some conversation of like he wanted to start doing it again, but she was saying no. Like, I don't know. I don't know. I said, look, you, the gift made a huge difference for me, and I'm really grateful for it, and it will help me. And I really wanted you to know the truth of what I just experienced. And if you need proof of it, I have it. And you could call any one of my kids or ask your daughter, who knew I was being physically abused at the time, why she didn't think that was important to tell you. From what you said on the phone, made me think that you were uninterested, which is why I didn't tell you. And I don't know what you've been told. So, but I think it's kind of weird that my sister would not have told our father that my brother was physically abusing me. That might be a question to ask her, or why every time she's moved me to these places and told me she'd help me, she didn't. and why, like, why every time. And this was smart of him. He said, if I ask that question, then she's going to go talk to your brother. Uh, because as far as we know, other than his wife, nobody know. I didn't tell my kids. I didn't tell my sister that I was meeting him. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell this lunatic. I walked out at 8:30, and of course she's off because it's New Year's Day, and they like to ruin all my days off. They ruined last week. This kid was off all last week, so all Christmas week now they get to be off, and all this week they get to be off. First, second, third. You know, they get to be off for 2 weeks. We had like 3 days when I was in school, but whatever. And so she's home. It's just disgusting. Whatever. I can never have a break. Um, anyway, just anyway, I didn't tell her even. I didn't tell my kids. I didn't tell my sister. I didn't tell her. As far as I know, the only person that knows that we met today was his wife. So it'll be interesting if it gets around, because we'll know who the source of that was. He said, "Look, I'm not going to tell anybody anything that you said. Um, I'm really sorry it happened." And again, that's the first time anybody said that. Like, I don't need you to fix it. That's the first time anybody since 2019 has said that to me. So it was really devastating to hear that he wanted me to be taken to a shelter, that he was punishing me for stuff his ex-wife did when he has had decades of experience with me being the complete opposite. And I told him the whole truth. So if something happens, then people will know. So it was a lot. And I wanted to get it out, and it's long. And I'm sure I'll be processing this for days. So I want to do it today so I can sleep and cry. And again, I haven't had any sleep, which can't be good. And in the middle, we went to lunch and had Mexican food, which wasn't good at all. And I got a margarita, and I couldn't drink it. It tasted like straight salt water. Like, I don't even know what it was. It was awful. So that was no fun. So I'm going to get something to eat and blow my nose. And I'm going to get a splitting migraine, which is why I don't like to cry. Which I know is dehydration. I need to drink water. But it's a lot, and my brain is just... Like, when I turn this off, I'm just going to probably stare and then fall asleep. But I got it out, so... I'm not, like, expecting vengeance, right? Like, people need to know what this person did. And he's dangerous. And if he ends up with head, it's because he tried to hurt me. I made it very clear. I'm going to get out of here. I get a little house and a little dog. And if he makes the effort to come anywhere near me, I'm going to see that as a threat. So, right? It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. And I'm getting really starey, and my nose is stuffed up. I'm just